Welcome back to Norton Man Reviews, everyone. I am John Norton, and this is a little something different that I'm doing. On the screen, you're seeing some of my art, some time lapse videos of my drawings of X-Men characters, because we are talking about X-Men 97. I've talked a little bit here on some of my videos as I've reviewed a whole slew and mess of X-Men comics, but I wanted to give my thoughts on this cartoon, this show, this masterpiece, if you will, and just kind of give all my thoughts on it. So here we go. So if you've been listening to me, you know that I'm a fan of this show. I was from the get-go, and I was excited for this show since the moment I heard it. Listening to my brother Rob's videos, he was saying like he felt that I wasn't excited for this, and he couldn't have been more wrong. I don't know where he ever got that idea, but I've loved the original X-Men cartoon since I was a kid, since it came on in 92, and I stuck with it and rewatched it so many times throughout the years. Part of my history with that show was there was a time when my family was split up because of financial reasons, and my mom, my two sisters, and I were separated from my dad and my two brothers as they were working to make money, and we were staying with our grandparents. So I was kind of all by myself a little bit, not being with my brothers. And my mom and my grandparents, they bought me a cassette tape of like the Night of the Sentinels Part 1 and 2. And I must have watched that thing over and over and over. I can't even count how many times. I watched it every morning. I could recite every single line of dialogue from beginning to end. The music was so good. That opening theme that everyone knows and loves. I couldn't get enough of it. And I watched every single episode as it came out. I was so into it. And I recorded as many episodes as I could later in life, and I remember especially rewatching season 2 quite a bit when I'd stay home from school when I was sick, and I would rewatch season 3, specifically the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix saga. So I loved that show. The final season when it was handed over to a different animation studio or whoever, and it just wasn't that good. So that's when my interest in it was kind of starting to go away. But when they announced that they were returning to this cartoon, I could not wait. I watched every single X-Men cartoon, X-Men Evolution, which is good, Wolverine and the X-Men, which only ran for one season and ended up on a major cliffhanger, which sucks, and we'll never see the resolution to that. So I was stoked. I was so happy when this was announced. And when they were talking about how they had the original cast members, as many as they could get, on board, I was even more so excited. So then they started releasing some still shots, and they started releasing some clips. I remember thinking it was so absurd that people were so upset with how Rogue was drawn and animated, and they took away her cake, making it her ass not as big or whatever. But it was just when people were initially complaining about that online, they'd take little screenshots just from a few seconds that they had seen. And they're Rogue looks horrible, but I could take a screenshot from random images or from random scenes of the original show and make it so Rogue looked horrible also. So when the show finally did come on, the animation was better than it was on the original show, had some anime flair to it, and Rogue looked good as she always did. Maybe she wasn't as sexualized in certain moments, but who can forget that time Rogue was showing her ass to the camera when she was fighting Apocalypse? Everyone knows that. But I just thought it was silly that people were so upset with something like that. So my initial thoughts are I love the show. From start to finish, I watched every single episode. Sometimes I couldn't wait and I would watch it on my phone at work. But then I was like, I want to watch it with like my wife at home on my like huge screen TV, where I'm comfortable. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm kind of go through each episode, kind of talk about what I thought of each one of those, and talk about the ones I liked and the ones I thought were a little bit boring. Starting off with episode 1, To Me, My X-Men. It was a great solid episode, intro to the characters, great animation, and it didn't get a lot into the story, but it didn't need to. It was just like, here are the characters, here are the X-Men, here's what's going on with them, here's how badass they are. Cyclops in particular, I think we're looking at him now, this drawing that I did of him. He took a step towards being like the badass leader that we all knew he was. His power set, how he was fighting the Friends of Humanity, and he'd shoot the ground with his optic beams to kind of push himself back, and who can forget like jumping out of the Blackbird, and him using his optic blast to keep himself from falling, from landing safely. That's all just fucking awesome, right? The X-Men theme in general was really good. It's updated but still stayed the same, and you never skip the intro on that, even though Disney Plus gives you that option. You always listen to it. It's just such a banger. But it was also with the intro, it was cool to see the updated animation from some of the classic scenes that they reproduce in there. And then also, like, there was the Marvel Studios logo that they would show before the theme would come on, and the way they showed that, the way they had that and had its own piece of music that segued into the main theme, added something to that X-Men theme that I just thought amplified it even more so. So at the beginning of each episode, I was just like hooked and like I can't wait to see what's going on. What else did I like about the first episode? Obviously that fight with the X-Men theme where they're fighting all the Sentinels. It was a little disappointing not to have like the same type of voice. The Sentinels sounded different than I was used to or expecting. I was hoping they kind of sound the same. I liked how they sounded in the original show. But that fight where they took on Master Mold and all those Sentinels, obviously Gambit jumping on Wolverine and charging up his claws, and Wolverine like taking off Master Mold's head, all awesome stuff. The storm sequence, bring what did Cyclops say? Bring the storm, bring the forecast or something like that, and Storm just showcasing how powerful she is, and turning like the sand into glass with lightning, and she's an Omega level mutant. All really cool stuff. I really liked Storm's voice acting. I really didn't. I think it's the same actress for her as the original, and I never liked Storm's voice in the original. I just thought it was like a little too over the top. I summon the full power of the storm. It was just like, okay, Storm. But this one, whether she's like a better actress or I don't know what it was, better directing or whatever, I just like was on board with her voice and how Storm was portrayed in this version. Then in the end, I love like the basketball sequence. Those outfits were taken out of the Jim Lee drawn issue of X-Men #4 when they were playing basketball. So that was a fun little Easter egg. Episode 2, also a great episode. The stuff with Magneto, showing his trial that was going on. His outfit that he was in with that big M usually looks ridiculous, and I kind of hate it, but I actually liked it in this version. And my wife was even saying like it was a sexy version. She liked it. It was like this black kind of almost leather kind of thing. And she's like, "Whoa, Magneto looks sexy. I like that outfit on him." But it was kind of a heartbreaking episode with Storm's fate, like her not being having her powers and how they handled that, and the tender moments that they had between her and Jean were really good. The cliffhanger with Madeline Pryor, or with Jean showing up and it was like clones. I was like, oh my god, they're doing like a Madeline Pryor thing here. Especially when like their kid was born. Jean who's on the screen here, she was pregnant throughout the first two episodes, and she finally had her baby, and named it Nathan. I'm like, oh my god, this is Cable. They're doing the whole Cable thing. We all knew that, but they barely alluded to it in the original show, but they went full on this. So when the clone or the duplicate Gene showed up, I was like, that cliffhanger. I was like, oh my god, what's going on? Speaking of Cable, when he did finally show up, I was a little annoyed that they didn't have the same voice actor, because the guy who played the executioner on this episode was the original voice of Cable. I recognize that voice. He had done some other stuff on other shows. So I knew him, and I'm like, oh my god, that's Cable's voice. He's like, when Cable shows up, they're going to have this guy do it. And then they had somebody's different voice. That kind of pissed me off, but no big deal. Episode 3, the Fire Made Flesh, that's an obvious homage to when Jean said that when she turned to Dark Phoenix. This was the full-on Goblin Queen stuff, and man, this Goblin Queen was sexy. This was a sexy episode. She didn't do that really sexy outfit that she wore in the comics, but this was a pretty good one. And I was kind of thinking like, oh, where's all the people complaining about like Rogue's Cake now? It went by fast, like Madeline Pryor is such a big deal, and they kind of went like, she became Madeline Pryor. She realized she had a clone, realized she was Madeline Pryor, went evil, went good, and then all the stuff with her baby, little Nathan, that kind of went by fast, but I felt that they did it well. I was engaged enough, and I didn't feel it really came out of left field, or I didn't really feel rushed at the time. But the end of that episode is so good, but it's so gut wrenching. It's so hard for me to watch. Even my wife, we have a 2-year-old. He's almost 2. We still call him our baby boy, and he's like just the most precious thing to us. And seeing Nathan, their baby, get sick, and start coughing, that little baby cough, like that just like gets us. Because our son, he tends to have a little bit more of a cough than I was expecting him to have. So hearing it in even an animated show like that, and then him getting sick and them having to give him up, that fucking made me cry, man. It made my wife cry. She was like shaking her head. She's like, nope, can't do it. Nope, we both had such a hard time. I mean, they did it really well, and I knew what was going to happen, even knowing like they have to give this kid up. He's going to become Cable. It was so sad, and I was kind of surprised that, they had to give him to Bishop to be sent to the future for this cure. I'm like, why wouldn't Bishop give up his, I know he wanted to go home, but why wouldn't he give up his thing so like the, Cyclops or Jean or Madeline or whoever could go with him, an actual parent, so they wouldn't have to be split up. That'd be so hard for a parent to do. If you guys have kids, you probably know what I'm talking about. But the end of that episode, it was so well done, and it gets me every single time. And I think it's one of like the best episodes of the season. Because that one was so good and all the stuff it had, the next episode 4, the Motendo, I did not like. I thought it was boring as fuck. I'm like, what are we watching? I've never really cared for Jubilee as a character. Sunspot was always not really interesting to me. Mojo has always been a boring villain. I've never disliked him, but I've never like, oh, cool, a Mojo story. Let's watch it. There's some fun stuff in it with the 16-bit video game stuff. So that was kind of fun, but I didn't care for that episode. And then the side story with Storm, Life Death Part 1. It's a good story for her, and it needs to happen. But again, I just was not interested in any of that after what had happened in the last episode. I wanted to know what was going on with Jean and Madeline and Cyclops. I wanted to know what was going on with, little Nathan, who was going to become Cable. That's what was interested me. So all this stuff with Storm, while good, ultimately, I did not care for, and I'm kind of disappointed. Episode 5, remember it? Best episode of the season, right? Is it the best episode of the whole series? That's up for debate, and I don't want to be like have recency bias where like I just saw it so it's fresh in my mind, so it's like the best thing ever. But man, it was such a good episode from like start to finish. It just got more and more entertaining. Like I was engaged with the storylines at the X Mansion with Trish Tilby. I'm like, ooh, her and Beast are kind of a thing. That's unique. And then Cyclops freaking out on camera. And that was the episode where Wolverine and Jean kiss, right? She was kind of like unsure of what was going on with herself, and Wolverine in the previous third episode, she had read his mind, so she could kind of like she was having a hard time like struggling knowing who she was, and Wolverine's like, read my mind, you'll know who you are, blah blah blah, and she kind of saw all like the love that Wolverine had for her, so she learned it there, and then she, like they kissed in this episode, and I was like, oh fuck man, that's crazy. But all the stuff when they got on to Genosha, like it was interesting seeing all of Genosha and like the happiness that it brought, and all the mutants there, and all the cameos that they had. Nightcrawler being there. They're talking to Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost, the White Queen, and wanting Magneto to be on the council, and Moira was there, and Banshee was there, and then the romance, the what do they call it? What's that? Anyways, between Rogue and Magneto, but then also with Gambit, and they were hinting at the Rogue and Magneto stuff, and Gambit had known that it was kind of going on, and he was kind of mind fucked in that third episode by Goblin Queen, seeing Rogue in her Savage Land outfit for a second. But you see more of their history, and it makes sense for Rogue why she would want to be with Magneto, or why she's attracted to him when she can actually touch him. She can feel him. And as much as Gambit says he loves her and that it doesn't matter, that matters to people. You need physical touch with someone you're in love with. And being able to do that with Magneto, that was good drama. And it was so heartbreaking when Rogue basically told Gambit that she couldn't be with him, and she was going to accept Magneto's offer to govern Genosha with him. And then when it got to the party, you saw the Watcher looking over. I didn't notice that at first, honestly. I was watching other videos that pointed it out. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. But just how it was amping up. You could tell something was on its way. Something was going to happen. I had no idea it was going to go in the direction it did. Maybe I should have seen it coming from the E for Extinction storyline, knowing what the Sentinels did there, and that's what happens. But I loved the party and the dance and the music that was going on at the time. I don't know I know that song is, I think, somewhat familiar to people, like it's an actual song people know, but I had never heard it. But it fit the scene so well when Magneto and Rogue were dancing up top. And that dress Rogue was wearing was the dress she wore also in that X-Men #4. A little bit different, but basically the same thing. It was cool seeing them fly while dancing, and Gambit just had to watch. And Madeline was with Gambit, and she knew what he was going through. Could see probably feel his heartbreak. But Rogue tells Magneto that, she can't be with him, but Gambit never knows that. But they never get a chance to even talk about that before all the shit went down, right? When the Sentinel finally showed up, the segue to when the shit went down, Madeline, she's there, and she gets mind blasted by something, and I'm still not sure where that came from. Was that from Cable? But Cable shows up, and he's trying to stop it, and he's like, cut the music, get everyone out of here. And so he's like, oh fuck, what's going on? And then I loved how you see the fireworks in the background going off as people are just having such a good time, but you see in the distance there was an explosion. They don't really dwell on it too much, and a lot of people don't know, but that was the first sign that the Sentinels were attacking. And then when it finally goes down, and that huge explosion, and everyone's rocked, and like it's just fucking up with everybody, and that fight and that sequence, man, I can't even say enough about it. The way they showed Magneto kind of taking control, telling Rogue and Gambit, do it, do this, do that. We will not wonder if we could have done more. Just kind of, Magneto wants to save people, and showing him and his power set, using that train as like a whip to attack that Sentinel, was just so fucking good. Rogue and Gambit working together, fighting off Sentinels, trying to rescue the Morlocks, and then Gambit Gambit dying essentially. We all know what happens. He gets impaled. And I was like, oh, fuck. And then when he said his line, the name is Gambit, remember it. And then charges up that Sentinel and makes it explode. That was such a good line. And people, I find it funny because, yes, Gambit did say that line in the original series. He said it in like the season finale of season 2. The name is Gambit, remember it. But I swear, Gambit stole that line from Cable. Cable said it in episodes earlier in the original series in season 2. He said it to Apocalypse when, Cable's telling Apocalypse, like, the name's Cable, remember it, because, they're in the present, in the future, in Cable's future, Apocalypse and Cable will meet. So Cable's like, remember my name, because in the future you're gonna know me. So that line originally was Cable's, and Gambit kind of stole it later, but now they adopted it. Now it's like fully like it's like Gambit, or my name is Gambit, remember it kind of a thing. I just thought that was kind of funny. But great episode, probably the best episode of the season. Definitely the best episode of the season for me. Trying to decide if it's like one of the best episodes of the series. Some of the stuff with Phoenix and Dark Phoenix were really good. The two-parter where Magneto created Asteroid M, those were really good episodes that I like. I'd have to think about it. The next episode after that with Xavier in space, again, kind of a letdown episode for me. That's not what I wanted to see. Like, after the events of episode 5 and going away from that to what was going on with Xavier in space, I couldn't really care. It was cool seeing the Shi'ar, Deathbird, Gladiator, all those characters doing their thing. That was cool, but I've never been a huge fan of Xavier. So I was fine that he was gone. And just having most of the episode showcasing on him was just like, I don't really care about that. Then they had to follow up with Storm. She had to get her powers back. And I think those episodes, those Life Death Part 1 and 2, would have been better if I had seen them separately from everything else was going on. But seeing Storm in her old costume, that old 70s original outfit, it's sexy as fuck, man. It makes no sense. But, man, I don't care. Even my wife's like, I want to wear that outfit. I was like, please do. But it was cool seeing her. And I was kind of wondering, how the fuck did that outfit just come out of nowhere? But, man, if you remember in the very first episode, very first thing Storm does in the original series, she's wearing regular clothes and she just magically creates her costume come onto her back then too. So whatever, it is what it is. Episode 7, that's the episode where Rogue was unleashed. She was just kicking everybody's ass. It was a fun episode. It was, again, sad seeing Gambit's funeral. Obviously every funeral has to be in the rain, but Rogue just kicking everyone's ass, going after the army, busting in on a Hulk prison with General Ross there was cool. Seeing Captain America there was fucking cool. Rogue just taking and yeeting his fucking shield into the Mountain probably like pissed off Captain America, but it was cool to see him there, because I thought it was going to be like a flashback or a time travel scene or something, and seeing him in real time, just like, oh, that's what I want. And when he talked about his team, and it's the Avengers, you're like, oh fuck, this is awesome. Nightcrawler was there, and he joined the team, so that was cool. I think he started appearing in the opening credits going forward. It was cool in the opening credits. Now I'm thinking about that, how they added and subtracted the characters based on what was going on. When Storm lost her powers, wasn't part of the team. She wasn't in the opening credits. When Magneto first showed up, like in the first episode, he wasn't there, but when Magneto joined the team, he was in the credits. When Gambit died, he was no longer in it. All cool stuff. And then the Bastion reveal was kind of surprising. It wasn't too surprising to me. I didn't see it coming like on my own, but I had watched some other videos where they had speculated that he was going to show up, because he did appear, and you did see him in places in almost every episode before that. And and when they realize they're doing the Operation Zero Tolerance shit, you're like, that's what they're doing? That's fucking crazy. So that's a good episode. The next one, episode 8, also a great episode. The Summers family, Cable being there with Jean and Cyclops, and them having their fun little adventure. I mean, it's fun for us to watch. It's terrifying for them. The Prime Sentinels attacking the mansion, and Wolverine and Nightcrawler fighting together, with Nightcrawler using the swords and using his tail as one, so he could like wield 3. And that was when Wolverine finally did something, right? I was annoyed through the series that Wolverine wasn't doing anything. Now, Wolverine doesn't have to be the main character. He's had a whole series on his own. The original series had so many episodes devoted to him. Almost fucking every X-Men movie of the original was a Wolverine central movie. He had 3 movies of his own. Wolverine is my favorite character, my favorite X-Men Marvel super comic book character. So I want to see more of him, right? Like, I like it, but you also enjoy the X-Men for those other characters as well, and their camaraderie and the stuff they do. So I like that Wolverine wasn't centralized in all this. But he needed to do something, right? And I was getting a little annoyed that he was just doing jack shit. This episode, he finally did something. He finally had an awesome fight scene. Falling through the sky, just taking out every Prime Sentinel on his way down, and then fighting with Nightcrawler was so cool. When Magneto finally got out and did his attack, I was like, oh my god, they're doing the Fatal Attractions thing. And then that's when I was like, oh my god, they're going to have to stop Magneto. What if this is the beginning of Onslaught? I was thinking it then. I'm sure a lot of people were. I'm not saying I'm the first one who thought of it. But that was fucking amazing. Then Xavier returns, and I was kind of like, all right, more Xavier. I guess he needs to, storyline-wise. And he was fine going through the rest of the series, but I wasn't interested in him. So, the episode 9, the penultimate episode, it's called what I call the OMG episode. Like, I couldn't, fucking believe it. The fight sequences were awesome. Obviously, the separation of the blue and gold teams was fun. Going back to the, the Jim Lee, Wills Portacio teams of Uncanny X-Men and X-Men #1. The relationship between Jean and Storm, like their sisterhood, was really, that was a nice little moment. I like what they said when Jean said, let them mine your weather, and Storm tells her, and let them weather your mind. That was a nice little, a moment between those two. And then Morph seeing his powers turning into the Hulk, turning into all the different characters. Morph was just like somebody we want to introduce, who can we put in this episode, but it doesn't make sense that they just show up, but we want to have them in it. Let's put Psylocke, let's put whoever, here's the Hulk suddenly. And then when the blue team with Wolverine was going up and he was fighting Magneto, you're like, it's fucking coming. When is it going to happen? And when it happened, Wolverine's fate, he fucking stabbed Magneto right through the gut. How did Magneto not die? It was much more violent in that than it was the comic book. I reviewed that X-Men #25. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But I couldn't fucking, like, it was like, oh my God, they're fucking doing it. I was like, even held my wife's hand. I'm like, oh my God, baby, they're doing it. She's like, what? I'm like, oh my God, they're doing it. And then they did it. And even that, they replicated Andy Kubert's art from that page of X-Men number 25. And then that's how it ended. The last episode, it's a good episode. Again, a little bit disappointing for me. Little bit of a dud. My brother, Rob, he had texted me, like, early in the morning. He watched it early, and he's like, call me so we can talk about it. I actually went home. My wife was sick, and I went home for lunch, and we watched it together. And I was like, it's good, but I was hoping for something different. I was hoping for something more. I don't know what. I thought like they'd have to be like focusing on Wolverine a little bit more and his fate, and he was kind of an afterthought. Too much of like Xavier telepathic mind stuff with Magneto, which it's fine. Like, it was all done very well and good character moments, but I don't know. There was just something about it that just didn't hit well with me. What else? The Phoenix, like Jean turning into a Phoenix, like, what is this? Like, why did she do, like, can she just use this power whenever, or is it just like a get out of jail free card? I wanted to see Jean in that outfit again, not the fucking Marvel girl one she had, but whatever. And then they time travel, Cyclops and Jean go into the future, and that's going to take some stories from, it was a comic called The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, where they were flung into the future, basically the same thing. They're called Slim and Red, and they raised baby Nathan, or a young Nathan Cable, so that's what they're doing. I heard someone had, I think, said that Storm, Morph, and Wolverine are also, since like you didn't see where they are, but they're also in that future. But in the past, Rogue, Nightcrawler, no, Morph was, where was it? No, Beast, Xavier, and Magneto, they go into the past, they see En Sabah Noor. I was like, oh, this is going to be Apocalypse. I'm not saying I'm the only one who knew it, but I was happy. Like, oh, fuck, look at that. And then, Apocalypse shows up at the very end on Genosha, and he picks up that card, and he mentions death, and I was like, is that going to have Gambit turn into a horseman? Like, bring him back? That makes sense. All the cameos, Daredevil, Captain America, Iron Man, Cloak and Dagger, Doctor Strange, Peter Parker and Mary Jane, which is kind of a cool thing, because if you watch the Spider-Man cartoon, at the end of that, it ended on with a cliffhanger with Mary Jane being lost into some other universe, like in the multiverse, and Spider-Man was going to go find her, but that series left on a cliffhanger. You never figured it out, but this kind of verifies that Spider-Man found Mary Jane, and she's back, I guess. But my big question for this episode is, like, you had Captain America and Iron Man sitting there, and with the leaders of the world, and they're watching all the shit go on with Magneto. I'm like, what are you going to do? What are the Avengers? Are the Avengers sitting around doing jack shit? Like, come on, Cap and Iron Man, fucking help, do something. It's like, if you're not going to do something, don't fucking show them to me. So, final thoughts. Love the show. I don't know what I was expecting, but this wasn't it. I thought it was going to be like these episodes that were just going to be one and done, but they made a complete storyline that I just couldn't wait from one episode to the next to see. So I was really happy how they're doing it. What are they going to do in the future? I mean, is Onslaught on the way? I mean, I feel that they can, if they can go multiple seasons, Onslaught probably should stew a little bit like he did in the comics. Like, he didn't show up right away. Could the Avengers show up more? Will there be Avengers versus X-Men kind of thing? The emotional moments, like I said, with little baby Nathan, man, that fucking moment gets me every single time. the Rogue and Gambit relationship and him dying and him not knowing that she had like chosen Gambit before he died. That's just heartbreaking. And all the stuff with Storm losing her powers, those were like good moments. I liked some of the real world, I don't know, real world stuff they put into this show. You know, we all know that mutants are a metaphor for being gay or for being a minority. And I think they really like hammered some of those moments well, especially like with the Professor X, Xavier, and Magneto scene, that last episode. You know, it was in Magneto's mind, but it was a memory of Professor X and Magneto like talking about mutants and saying like, hey, do you have power? Like, I don't know, do you have powers? I can only imagine if someone were to be gay and trying to like, they don't want to be persecuted or they don't want to be like put down, and like, is this other person gay? Like, is it okay to talk about, you know? So and then Sunspot kind of coming out to his family, like revealing to his family, but then them saying like, oh, it's okay, we knew all along. Pardon me. But maybe let's like try and keep it under wraps. Like, that's probably like some good analogies for being gay. Beast, some of his quotes, like I love that in one episode he quoted Mr. Rogers and Martin Luther King. And then one of the quotes that I really liked, that Magneto said when it was in episode 5 and they were talking with Valerie Cooper, and she was saying like, not everyone lets a terrorist be a leader, and Magneto says, yet so many allow their leaders to be terrorists. I'm like, oh my god, that's so good, such a good line. So what's going to happen with this show? God, I hope it continues. Like, there's reports that have like low viewership but high ratings. Hopefully, just word of mouth gets around. I mean, they're already well underway for season 2. Like, so many of the voice actors like say like, oh yeah, I finished all my stuff for season 2, and they've already done preliminary stuff on season 3. So hopefully it goes for a few seasons. It's kind of concerning that the showrunner, Bo DeMaio, I think his name is, he was let go right before like the premiere, and we don't know why. Like, why was he let go? For what reason? You know, so I can't have an opinion on like whether it was a, you know, justified firing or not without knowing anything. But hopefully without him in it, because he wrote the second season, but going forward without him, hopefully it still kind of keeps those big standards, those high standards. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you watch the show too. Let me know your thoughts on the show, what you like, what you didn't like. I would recommend this show to anybody, like regardless of what you think about Disney or whatever. Fucking, this is such a good show, and it's probably one of my favorite things that has been on Disney Plus, for sure. Like, more so than the Loki series or some of those other series that people like. This X-Men 97 is probably the best thing that Disney Plus has produced for me. I'd have to think about that, but I'm pretty sure it is. So again, thank you for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, I will see you in the next video.